Good evening, everybody. Welcome to CityLit's virtual event with Jennifer Keishin Armstrong, author of Pop Star Goddesses and How to Tap into Their Hidden Energies to Invoke Your Best Self. And also welcome to her conversation partner tonight, Britt Julious. Jennifer is the New York Times bestselling author of Seinfeldia, How the Show About Nothing Changed Everything, a history of the Mary Tyler Moore Show, which is Mary and Lou and Rhoda and Ted, and Sex and the City and Us, how 4 single women changed the way we think, live, and love. She spent a decade on staff at Entertainment Weekly and has since written for many publications, including BBC Culture, the New York Times Book Review, Vice, New York Magazine, and Billboard. She also speaks about pop culture, history, and creativity. Britt is a writer of many genres, an editor and a storyteller. She currently serves as editorial director of the Cancer Wellness magazine, writes a music and nightlife column for the Chicago Tribune, and previously edited for Vice's Thumb. She regularly contributes to publications including the New York Times, Vogue, Women's Health, Elle, and Esquire. Her work focuses on the intersection of art, culture, race, feminism, and politics, and she's a firm believer in the underground, the avant-garde, and the underdog. Please join me in welcoming them both to City Lit Books.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. I'm very excited to be here, and I will show the book briefly before we get started. But I will turn it over to Britt, my conversation partner here tonight. Thank you for doing this with me.
Absolutely. So I love this book. I feel like it was like exactly right up my alley. I love pop music and I love pop stars, but I also like thinking of them from like a critical standpoint, which I think only recently has kind of music criticism in general really like caught up to looking at, the lives and the, what's the word I'm looking for? Like the purpose and the stories behind these women who are making music that really kind of just defines the era in which they are, top of the chart. So I guess I'd like to, to start, I'd love to just know kind of where did the idea for this kind of book come from for you? Just what was the sort of process like in terms of developing it?
Yeah, it was a really one for me because it is obviously a little bit different from my other books, which are about TV history. And I was trying to figure out a next book. And honestly, it was partly due to just like the feeling of not being able to figure out like in that same mold and kind of panicking like, oh my God, what am I going to do next? And so this is sometimes where the best stuff happens because I was just like getting to that point where I was putting anything on the list, like any crazy. And it really came from two things. First, I'm obviously a huge fan of especially female pop stars, but I actually do visuals here. I have the What Would Beyonce Do sign above my desk. And I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about the fact that I really do look at it sometimes, like when I'm having a difficult business call or something like that, and I really do think, like, what would Beyonce do right now? Or at least in my imagination. She would ask for more money. She would do what, And then I was also kind of interested at the time in goddess practices. I have a friend who has done some like goddess workshops with yoga, that kind of thing. And I was reading some books on it. And I just somehow like put the two together and went like, I feel like we treat our female pop stars very similar to the way we think about goddesses. I feel like they embody certain traits that we want to invoke, as I say in the book. That I really do think to myself sometimes, like, what would Beyonce do? But it also sometimes it's more like, what would J-Lo do or think or feel in this moment? Or any, and they all have these very different energies that you can kind of go to them for different times in your life. And it started, and I just really actually like took out a goddess book that I had like Kempton, and kind of like wanted to mimic that basic structure and have like each chapter is a goddess, and then there's qualities she embodies, and then there's like journal prompts where you can get in touch with it, and then of course, what else are we here for?
Right. Right. Speaking of goddesses, have you ever heard of like goddess oracle decks?
Yeah.
They're like, my friends and I, we're very into those. And so I liked, with the chapter pop star sort of corresponding to these goddesses, which are, there are, kind of tried and true, figures who are considered like goddesses, like like a Mary Magdalene or a Lakshmi or things like that. So yeah, but anyway, I just wanted to mention that because I just, I loved how that was really structured. But intro to the book, you kind of start off by talking about Britney Spears. And, in my mind, she's someone who is both a, tragic figure and a triumphant figure, which I always say is like the ingredients to what makes a pop diva. Like you can't be a diva unless you have both of those components there. Like there has to be a little bit of both of them. But I guess I wanted to kind of ask you to just in general, what sort of qualities in Britney do you think really make her a goddess and not just like any old pop star?
Yeah, I do. I think you hit it right there. I didn't totally anticipate this going in. It was obviously what I knew about Britney because I'm a huge Britney stan and I know a lot about her. Yeah. She was a huge part of my inspiration as well. I have another visual aid. I have the Britney Spears candle.
Love it.
So, I knew that going in, but I didn't totally anticipate that that was actually going to be the structure of most of the stories. That I hadn't totally realized how almost every one of these women has had kind of some public struggle, downlit, and come back. If you've been around long enough, that's what's happened. Right. Because that's what happens to, I guess, people probably, but certainly we do have this tendency to kind of build people up and tear them down in our pop culture, right? So Britney is the iconic example of that. And I think that what I realized is that the same is true of even the traditional goddesses that I was, pairing them with, because a lot of the goddesses get there, whatever it is that you actually think of them as representing, it often comes from what they struggled with. She is my goddess of resilience. I say this all the time when I write about Britney, that it is a miracle that it's kind of, but it's a miracle almost that she's still with us, given what she went through. And I get almost choked up sometimes when I still think about it. And especially writing this book and having to dive back into the details of what happened to her back in that 07, 08 era. Even I, as a fan at that time, I don't think I could fully take it all in. And when I was doing the research and reliving that, I was like, it's like what we did to her is so crazy. And no human being should have to go through that. And I also always say that from now on, Britney gets to do whatever she wants. And as long as it isn't harming any other human beings, we need to just leave her alone. Her do her Instagram, she wants to twirl all day on her Instagram. That is what she gets to do because she has earned a peaceful, whatever you want to call it, retirement, whatever. I don't know if she's going to make music again or not, and she does not owe us anything. It's the main thing.
Speaking kind of thinking of Britney and the rest of the book, when we're sort of like thinking about the tragedies that they've faced, it's not just that they've faced tragedies or these sort of downturn moments, but that like they've been very public, and I feel like that is something that like makes them into these sort of like goddess figures. It's not, it's, Rihanna's domestic violence. It is, Beyonce's, facing infidelity. It's, Taylor Swift, her, the sexual assault incident she had and the fight for her records and things like that. It's never kind of hidden behind closed doors. So I guess kind of like thinking of that, does that in any way sort of play out into, what you consider to be a goddess, like the fact that, we have seen kind of all of these aspects of their lives?
Yeah, for sure. And something I even say, like, especially something like the Beyonce situation, which as you know, I wrote that chapter. I struggled with that chapter because it's like Beyonce is like the goddess, you know what I mean? So what do you even say? But I tried to take what I take from her. And for me, I realized it really was how she handled her relationship with Jay-Z when things went bad. And I always emphasize when I talk about this, I don't know them. I don't know their lives for real. And I believe they've never actually officially said in regular language, not through their song, that this is what happened. So we just take what we see and how we interpret it. And I think that's part of a goddess narrative, is actually that it is the public perception and it is the story that is important. It doesn't matter what's happened. I mean, it matters to those two people what's happened between them. The only thing that matters to us and the way that we think of her is the narrative we tell around her, right? So I'm sure Taylor Swift has had other problems. I'm sure, like there's all it, but it's like it really is the public meeting that these semi-private struggles at times that really makes them. And when I looked at somebody like Beyonce, it really, we all know the story, but it's still pretty incredible when you think back on it. I remember watching Lemonade for the first time when it premiered and just being like, wait, what did she just say? Like, what is she saying? I think Jay-Z. It was just so shocking that it seems like the basic narrative was something like he was, she experienced his infidelity, she found out about it, and she was like, okay, so I'm gonna forgive you, congratulations, now, but I get to make an incredible record out of it, is the deal. And then he even made a pretty incredible record after that as well. So, I guess that's the point of calling it Lemonade, but it really, it to me was it was such a different way of being empowered. I guess that's the best way I would say it. And some people have said to me, even in the editorial process, we had a little debate over there was some why are we just saying that the best thing about Beyonce is that she took her cheating husband back? Yeah. And I was like, first of all, if you've been in a long-term relationship, it's always a little more complicated than that. I don't think that staying with your husband or not is really a feminist act. I think it's a private decision, but the ways that she handled the public part of it were so surprising and incredible and empowering to me.
Yes. Yeah. Choosing to not necessarily like taking back the narrative, but choosing to share her story in her own way, on her own terms, be very kind of just explicit in some ways about all the things that she had gone through, especially kind of knowing the album she had before, where she was like, I'm drunk in love and all these things and everything's great. And then the next album is like, actually, like, wait a minute, like, hold up,
literally.
Great, literally. Kind of also going to thinking about like that, the kind of public narrative thing. I wanted to touch on Sia, who I thought was a really interesting choice for inclusion. And, Sia's been around for a while. I remember listening to her like more than when she was this Australian kind of indie, kind of rising pop star, disappeared, and she wrote music for other people, including Beyonce, we've mentioned, and Rihanna, and kind of other goddesses. But when Sia started releasing more music of her own, what I found really interesting was, kind of like what you said, like the title of the chapter being about, and sort of kind of separating herself very visibly from the public. So I guess I wanted to know just a little bit more about, Rhea was selected, and kind of how she maybe represents like a different form of what it means, both like a pop star and a goddess.
Yeah, that was exactly what I was going for. I mean, some of the stuff was just purely, there's 35 of them, and I wanted to be able to one. And so I do have, like, there's some that had to be there, right? There's, you couldn't do this and just be like, Beyonce's just not to be included. Like, I feel like Beyonce, Rihanna, Britney, Christina, there's to be there. And then I wanted to have some that were just like, others that maybe you didn't even hear of before, but you learn about through this book. So she was definitely one where I thought like, oh, she's an interesting new way of being a pop star, and she's proven that you can actually do it without she's almost the opposite of everyone else in the book, right? She's like the empty vessel. She's made it so that it's not about her look. I mean, it is in its own way, right? This once, I'm not sure, there might be variations, but she might be the only one who gets to do this. But she's kind of done it so it's like, it's not about her face, it's not about her body for sure. And it's not about her personal life, right? So she is the anti-goddess. There's a couple others that I think qualify for like, you know, variations on the goddess form. I feel like Carly Rae Jepsen has talked about, I quote her in the chapters talking about how like her whole thing is that she doesn't want to do the like, oh, I have my Madonna look for this album and I have this personal narrative. Like both of them are actually just really focused on writing songs. Sia turns out to be such a beast at writing hits. She's like, I mean, I thought that was really interesting too. And I was very interested throughout the book in, of course, all these women are at the top of their game, but there are certain ones that really emphasize like the business aspects, and like Katy Perry is one where it, you know, her main thing was like, I am very good at writing hits and I would like to keep doing that. I want to be the best at that. And I think Sia is similar, except that she's even taken herself out of the equation and realized that, at least for now, her voice is so incredible and her songs are so incredible that she can just be a pop star without being a pop star. And then also kind of added in that avant-garde dance thing that she does with hers. And that's like, there's a couple of these that really start to veer into performance art. And while Lady Gaga has sort of like stamped herself as that person, I think there's some others that are doing some really interesting little fringy things like Sia.
Nice. I also wanted to kind of going along with the idea of Sia, interesting or unique choices. I feel like you also had a couple of this who are maybe more new to fame, right? Someone like a Cardi B, SZA, Casey Musgraves. So, you know, how do, you know, how and maybe why do these newer performers kind of qualify as goddesses versus, you know, maybe some other people who have been around a little bit longer?
Was really interesting that we're sort of like breaking you know, there was a point at which we had a cutoff, because especially with this book, not only does it just take a while to write one, but we had art by a wonderful artist named Robin Markle. I'm going to see if I can show one briefly here. Did I just see Britney? Yeah, he's so cute. We'll do Britney. So there's Britney. They each have these beautiful, and we had to like decide on the look that they were going to, you know, it was a whole process. So there was a point at which we just couldn't have it anymore. But Cardi B strikes me as the one that maybe was the most late breaking, where I was literally learning about her as we went, because there was, I don't know, I did develop a little bit of an inner sense of that's a goddess, that isn't. Mm-hmm. And one of the biggest things is that she just has to represent something. Like I have to be able to say she's the goddess of something. And then, you know, she has to have a story to tell. And then there was also just a variety issue to some extent. And Cardi especially felt like she brought something new to the party. It is sort of another variant on fame, like Sia, in that I thought that she was, and a million articles have been written about this already, so this is not a new idea, but she was sort of like this whole new model of a pop star emerging before our eyes, and she continued to nail it. It's incredible. Like I've just been checking on my goddesses as news continues to hit us in the face constant year, and I just kind of want to know like who's on top of it, who isn't, is there anyone behaving badly? And Cardi B is just this incredible, it's like she came up as a stripper. That was how she became famous online, by posting about this. And then she was a reality show star. And then she was like this unbelievably huge, you know, her first album was just this huge hit. And it was right while I was like finalizing my list that was breaking, Bodak Yellow. And first I was like, anybody making that kind of noise I had to the list, because you have to be next to like Beyonce and Celine Dion too, right? So you have to feel like you belong there. And somehow Cardi did. It's like she only had one album, so her playlist is almost all just like features and some stuff from her album. But I felt like she represented something new, which was that she embodied all of these facets of herself really publicly and really easily, so that one minute she's telling you maybe more than you want to know about her love life, her social media, and the next minute she's saying really smart things about the president or gun control, or, you know, and she doesn't see that as a contradiction, and she makes you realize, and while other people, you know, reading people writing about her, I can see them doing it, going, oh, right, we need to, like, we think this should be a contradiction. It shouldn't be. Like, of course you can be a former stripper who is now a very famous rapper who is beautiful and also totally done up and also very interested in politics and can say smart things about it. Like, she loves US history. And I think that's great. That not only, I mean, that's probably always been true that you can be all those things, but what's different about her is that she doesn't seem to think she has to keep any part of that. I would bet there's pop stars who totally nerd out about US history or science or something and keep it from us because it doesn't go with that one image. And she's just like, this is me. And I thought that was remarkable.
Love it. Love it. That's such a great explanation, and I love it. And so kind of going along with that, tell us, you know, maybe who are some people that maybe wouldn't fit the idea of a pop star goddess?
Yeah, there were some who just like, the main things were that there were a few that were just a little too young still, even if they had come after her or whatever, like that didn't quite matter. It was just that she exploded with this personality so quickly and clearly. There were some that were kind of on the fringes for me, like a Selena Gomez is a good example, because Demi Lovato, who kind of is very much her contemporary, is there. And I knew, it's like, I can jumping out and having words with me. But I felt like Demi represented something specific, which is that she's gone through this recovery journey. She's another one, remarkably public about her struggles and really vulnerable. And she's written songs about this. And I just thought no one else in this book has such a public recovery narrative as her. And she still acknowledges all the time, like she went back into rehab and talked about it later, you know? And I thought that was really important, and in a way that maybe some of these other girls like didn't necessarily have or didn't have yet. There were a couple that came after our timeline that I was sad about, because I was still like finalizing the book, and like last year Lizzo and Billie Eilish 100% would have gotten in like on their inaugural albums to me. They both represented clear stuff to me, really new, but they were just too late. And somebody like Dua Lipa is having a really good year this year and is maybe just starting to creep up to the level where I would at least start researching her and being like, maybe she fits here, because, you know, again, there's other Mariah Carey's in them. So it has to like rise to that level and bring something new. But yeah, I mean, I love that there's still girls who are coming up, doing their thing, and sometimes it just takes a couple albums before we really understand exactly who you are and what you're doing. You know, and that's true of a lot of the women who are in this book would not have necessarily made the cut on their first album.
That makes a lot of sense. I was going to say someone like Billie Eilish was really interesting to me, because when she kind of came out on the scene, you know, you did have some people who were like, why does she dress like that? Why is she like that? You know, all these things. And to me, it's kind of like you said, it's one of those things where you can kind of just, there's like something a little bit different. Wait a minute, like there's a little bit more substance here, or a little bit more of a story that needs to be told. And and it's rare for, you know, someone like someone like a Billie Eilish, who from that first album they are it's different. And you know, there's a theory that I've seen online on, like, you know, kind of pop music message boards, and they always say like kind of like new generational pop stars kind of come about every years. And so they'll say like 99 was Britney, and 2009 was Gaga, and like 2019 was Billie Eilish. And I'm like, I can kind of see that. Like, she seems very sort of important for Gen Z, and we haven't necessarily seen a Gen Z pop yet, right?
Exactly.
So,
I feel like the closest in this book is like a SZA, that kind of thing. And I do feel like SZA's close in that one of the reasons I picked her, we didn't talk about this before, but one of the reasons I chose her, I mean, part of it was just like, I might see somebody and be like, oh my God, who is this? I love her. I saw her on something, maybe SNL, something else, but I just had one of those moments of like, who is this girl? I want to know everything about her. And I love that she has this like weird girl energy. That's the best, and I say that in the best way possible, right? She has this awkward, weird thing happening in a very like incredible vulnerability in her songs, where she'll talk about feeling awkward and weird. And she also does that on social media. Like, I love that about her. But Billie Eilish is definitely in that. There's a bucket that she fills that hasn't been filled for a while, right? Fiona Apple kind of came back with a vengeance this year, and I was thinking so much about like Eilish is in the Tori Amos, Fiona Apple. Like, I think we have to have one of those about every 10 years specifically, like the girl who's just an incredible musical prodigy, essentially. And that's what Billie Eilish is. And she is, I mean, I feel like the kids really found her. My impression, it was like they were all already talking about her, and then I checked her out, and I did not expect her to be so incredible musically to an adult as well, like she is.
Yeah. Speaking of someone like SZA, when I sort of think about you know, her sort of tragedy or hardship and her triumph, I think of just even the creation of her first album, where, you know, she behind the scenes was fighting for a long time just to get that album heard. You know what I mean? Where she was like having issues with her record label, and she was like, I'm just gonna leak this, like, you all are just keeping me closed, like, this is so frustrating, you want me to be this other person, and that's not the kind of person I am or the music I want to make. And finally they were just like, okay, we'll just like release this immediately. I remember that came out that Friday, and you know, I woke up that Friday morning and it was like top trending. Everyone's like, oh, this album's amazing. And we just assumed it was going to be bad because we've been waiting for music from her forever, but actually it's like brilliant. And I think it kind of speaks to, like you said, that kind of weirdness and strangeness about her, where, you know, they were really trying to kind of put her into a certain box, and she was like, that's not who I am. She's like, I'm kind of tomboyish, I'm kind of, you know, I have been through these uncomfortable situations that we don't, you know, necessarily expect from our you know, pop singers to talk about, not just about like being in love, but like, maybe I'm the other woman, maybe I'm these, you know, in these sort of certain situations. So yeah, I felt like seeing that chapter in there was, actually I can really see it, because she, just to get to where she was is sort of, you know, that's how her whole career kind of started in many ways.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, it's funny because you mentioning that, like, I feel like there's a couple of categories of difficulties that these women all fit into, right? There's probably, I don't know, 3 or 4. I hadn't thought about it before, but one of the big ones is record label troubles. Like, fighting for your art is a big part. Like, Kelly Clarkson has done it, others have done it, where there is this idea, and it's crumbling, and it's because of women like the ones we've been talking about. Especially, I feel like Billie Eilish, just because of the hugeness, like, they pay attention to money.
Right.
So, like, the hugeness of her is going to make them all now suddenly think they should all wear track pants and, you know, whatever. And
right.
That's not going to work either. But there was a time when it was like Britney and Christina were obviously, first of all, they were completely molded by the record companies. And then everybody came after, for the longest time, had such a hard time. I mean, Pink wrote songs about it, right? Tired of being compared to damn Britney Spears. And Jessica Simpson, I just, God bless her, read her book earlier this year and loved it. And one of the best parts of it to me, there's so much in there, but one of the best parts is that she talks about coming up with Britney and Christina and coming a little bit after, and the ways that they would explicitly say to her, like, you need to have Britney Spears abs, like starve yourself, you know, and that kind of thing, where it just, now it feels like it's opening up so much more. And it's partly because these women like SZA fought to get their albums heard and then made money, which means all bets are off and you get to do what you want if you make money for them.
Love that. Can you tell me why, you know, for each of these, you know, sections on the goddesses, why you also decided to include journal riffs, you know, journal prompts for the readers?
A huge part of that was just the goddess books I was reading. Like, they all have that vibe and they would have these journal prompts. And I thought, like, that's the best way also. First of all, I love journal, like to write in journals, but I find it often difficult to like get going. And it felt to me like a really nice way to, and kind of a like nice little self-indulgent way to get into that, you know, energy, as we say. And it was both one of the more fun and also one of the more challenging parts of this, because like some of them easily, other times I was like, why did I start this, you know, like why did I make this a thing that I was doing? But I feel like it worked out okay, and it was fun to do. And I just wanted to give the book a little bit of a sheen of like that self-helpy thing without going too crazy, because that's just not my thing. So most of them, the essays are kind of straightforward. Like, here's this woman, here's why I think she represents. They're like little arguments, they're little essays. But then this was the one point at which I felt like I could give it a little bit of that, like self-care, whatever you want to call it. I think self-indulgence is good. So, you know, just kind of that like self-helpy, get in the bath kind of feeling.
Love it. Love it. Who would you say is maybe an underrated or an under-recognized star goddess?
I had a couple that I picked on purpose that I knew were like quirky favorites of, in addition to like a SZA. One of my favorite examples of this is Carla Bruni, the former First Lady of France, who I really wanted an older goddess. I dispensed with Madonna in the intro because I feel like Madonna's too huge to like deal with, and I feel like she is the one who invented in some ways. I mean, Cher came before, but you know, she really perfected the pop star goddesshood. And I feel like probably every one of the women in this book would cite Madonna as a, you know, as some reference point. Whereas like, you know, I still wanted somebody who was out there doing her thing in her 50s and beyond, but not Madonna. And that's actually not that easy. We've got Celine, I think, might be getting close at this point. I'm not sure. I can't remember exactly how old she is. Celine's totally a goddess. But I really thought there's a specific thing. I mean, it's very French. I'm sorry to play into the French stereotype, but it's true. Carla Bruni is like 1000% French. You know, I went to one of her shows, I think while I was doing this, so that was obviously influential. And, you know, she has these intimate shows. She doesn't do stadiums. And she plays acoustic guitar and writes these beautiful little French songs. And one of my favorite things she did recently is she had a whole album of covers in English, her little jazzy French versions of like Enjoy the Silence by Depeche Mode, or my favorite, Highway to Hell. She does this Highway to Hell. Like, it's just this very like super chill version of these songs, and it's really fun and very French. And she comes out in her blazer and her leather pants and is just not doing anything except being cool on stage. And you're just like, why are you so amazing? Like, it just, she's such a great specific role model, especially if you want to look to somebody a little bit older. Like, we can't all, you know, if you're in your 40s, you don't want to, like, Ariana Grande is great, but maybe you don't want to emulate her. Right. This was somebody I feel like you can really look to and emulate. Laura Jane Grace was another one that was just a personal favorite of mine. The lead singer of the band Against Me, who came out as transgender a few years ago, wrote an incredible memoir about the experience, and like having this rock star goddess who is trans felt important to me, but also like that's almost beside the point in the sense that she brings something totally different from all of the other goddesses to the table. She's just like, it's incredible. And I love watching her play. I love listening to her songs. It's just like this totally different experience. So I had hoped that throwing some of these in would just like make somebody, while flipping through, find something new that maybe they didn't know about before.
Excellent. Can you tell us, we kind of touched on it briefly, but the illustrations, how did you find the artist, and how did you decide which sort of moments out of their looks to kind of use as the image?
So fun. And it totally new. I had never done this before. So it's just a whole different experience. And technically my responsibility, even though the publisher had to sign off on it, to hire this person. And so my editor had helped and like put together a little bit of a list because I wouldn't know where to begin. But it was mostly artists who were working kind of online to some extent, like had a pretty good portfolio that you could just see in public for whatever, doing, whether they were doing like their own comics, or in this case, Robin Markle is the artist. They have an Etsy store called Flaming Idols. Mm-hmm. So I highly recommend looking this up because it's so good for gifts. And this selection just gets bigger and bigger every day. So there was a lot of overlap. This is the Flaming Idols. I can do another visual aid. Here is the Beyonce candle, Flaming Idols. And then they'll have like this little, you can't really read it, but you can see it. There's like a little explanation on the back. And the idea is that they're all LGBTQ idols. And then there's the little thing that's on the back explains, very similar to my book in some ways, why they see this person as a flaming idol, and it turned out there was a lot of overlap between LGBTQ idols and pop star goddesses. Almost all of them are available. Already any, cross marketing at Flaming Idols candles. And they also have additional stuff like Grace and Frankie, the television show, that kind of thing. They have political leaders, all kinds of stuff. But so that was how we found them. And then, went through a process of just like, do you want to do this, et cetera, et cetera. And then the really fun part was Robin pulled just a bunch of photos for each one, probably gave us, 3 or 4 looks that they had found, that kind of were real iconic looks, and or they looked goddessy kind of too. Because sometimes they really just like, Beyonce has multiple times and deliberately in this, dressed herself as a goddess-like figure. Other times I think that we had the Lady Gaga look we picked was not, we decided to dispense with like a meat dress situation and go more with like this ethereal, thing she had on. Somebody like Pink, I really wanted her to kind of have that masculine thing that she does so well. So I love that one because she's in like a suit situation. But somebody like Britney, it was really hard to avoid doing. I mean, we went with the snake because I think that makes the most sense, though you could have gone with an oops red, cat suit thing or that kind of, she has a couple of, or we could have, we looked at, of course, Baby One More Time. But I liked the snake because it was right in her sweet spot of like a little grown up, sexy, and then the snake. I mean, I feel like that was a little bit goddessy in itself. So that was a really fun part. Also because it meant it was not about me doing work. It was about someone in that case. But I just feel like it turned out so beautiful, and it was one of those things. Of course, I had seen the illustrations as they went, but when I got the physical thing, it's even better than it ever looked on the screen. So I do recommend getting a physical copy if you can, because it's just like, I don't know, it's just such a like, everything is so beautiful. Look, there's Casey Musgraves. and you know, it was harder with some of those, you know, some of them have tons of iconic looks, some of them have barely been around long enough to have iconic looks, but that part was really fun. And I mainly wanted it to be that you could look at the, you know, illustration and know who it was based on the look they had going on.
Excellent. So we have a couple of questions from people watching. So from JP, it's asking, what is the most surprising thing you learned about one of the women in the book? And what's something interesting that was cut for time and get into the book?
From a video editor, I love it. There were goddesses that I knew I wanted, but I didn't, you know, there's 35 goddesses. So I admit that I am not, you know, the world's foremost expert on 35 different women. So something like the Britney thing, I barely had to look at research just to check facts. And others, I learned a lot about, like Mary J. Blige, for instance. I had sort of been aware of her music, obviously, but hadn't really delved into her personal life, though it turned out to be very similar to listening to her music, which was what I guess hoped for to some extent, just that she has this, you know, I knew that I wanted to pick her as a sort of confessional feeling to her music, but I really delved into that. And I, you know, even just like, or just remembering back some of these people too, like a Queen Latifah, it was like, I knew it and then forgot it, and I was able to like go back and learn about it again. And that was really cool. It was so fun because it was like, I wished I had more time. I was on a pretty tight schedule, and I had about a week or sometimes less per goddess as I was writing. And I really wanted to like luxuriate them. And I would like listen to their music for that time. Like I'd go for a run and listen to Casey Musgraves and then write about her. But then I had to be like, all right, moving on. So that was just, it was fun to sort of like dive into some of these women that I either hadn't in a long time or had never really learned about. Even Cardi B, I hadn't learned that much about, and I was so enjoying just watching her videos and stuff. What was the other question? Oh, cut for time. Yeah, there was a number, I'm trying to remember if there's anything like really great that would think like specific things that were cut. It was more like having to cut down the list even of the 35 it's 35 is a lot, but it's still, there were still people where I was like, oh, Selena Gomez, or, you know, that kind of thing, or we'd get a late breaking one and swap them out. We had even some, I was like, does Christina Aguilera belong in? Does she not? I know that's controversial. But there were just a lot of those kinds of discussions that went on. Oh, Miley Cyrus was one. That's a good one. That, and sometimes I like see people now, I wish I had put Kylie Minogue in, and I didn't. There were just a couple, I almost feel like I could do a whole book that would still, the women would live up to this standard, and you could have even more, or somebody like an Alanis Morissette, where in that 1.5 years ago, I didn't feel like she was out there with her music that much. Now I was about to go to her tour this summer, but at that time she wasn't super, you know, prominent. So I just left her out. So there were people like that where I just kind of had to make those sorts of decisions based on instinct. And, you know, there's so many more that I would love to write about. Robin's another one. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it was more like they felt like there were a couple that were really similar to me in terms of their aesthetic or whatever. And we just had to kind of like be like, I don't know. And sometimes it would just be based on my own personal taste or knowledge. Like, I know that one better, so that's who's going to stay, that kind of thing.
Excellent. Another question. Have you received comments from any of the goddesses?
I wish. No. Sadly, and this book was a little bit challenging. It came out post-pandemic, post-lockdown. So a lot of stuff that we wanted to do in terms of promotion, we were not able to do, which is a long way of saying, like, we had planned to send them out to people, that we couldn't do all of that we wanted to do. So it was mainly to people like Britt and other, you know, we got, and some PDFs to people, but getting stuff to like Beyonce is a little more challenging and would have required people in the office. You know what I mean? This book is sitting on the desks of so many people in offices, like unopened, that didn't get it yet. So I'm hoping for after everybody goes back to work, including Beyonce. I'm ready for, actually I would be even possible, I don't want to say more excited, but I would be Spears Instagram for a whole bunch of reasons, not just because I love her, but also because Britney Spears Instagram is everything you need during the pandemic. Highly recommend. There's a lot of twirling. She just cut bangs. That was big news on her Instagram. She weeks of discussion about the bangs and she finally did it. A lot of crop top wearing lately. A lot of walking in her garden. I'm fascinated. There's no detail too small for me when it comes to Britney Spears' everyday life, and quarantine has been a perfect time for
She's
that.
very carefree on her Instagram. It's not controlled like other.
I mean, what I would say, and I do not mean this in a bad way at all, I love it, is that sometimes I look at it and I'm like, oh, she definitely doesn't have a social media person, does she? Like, it's not expert. Sometimes there's like a big thing is she'll post basically the same picture multiple times. Like, it's very much like it's just like a Midwestern mom doing her Insta, you know, like, and including the fact that she'll just post like, you know, a meme with an inspirational quote. Sometimes she's got Albert Einstein. It's just such a mixed bag. Sometimes she paints it, you know, sometimes she's like, here's my hot trainer boyfriend. Just whatever, and I love it. It's really great. I totally recommend it if people have not seen it.
From Jordan, we have who's each of your next goddesses, and one in particular that's surprisingly on the rise right now. I think someone who would in my mind I think could qualify, someone like Megan Thee Stallion. There's something I think that she, especially for me as like a tall Black woman like her, like when she first came out, I was like, ooh, I like this, because she is very, you know, open about her sexuality and her even I would even just, it's like a very deep love of her own body and her own physicality more than sexuality, right? Because she's not necessarily like, she'll twerk, but it doesn't even feel like it's for anyone. It's just to be like this, I'm just letting y'all know how good I am at this. There's something for me there that's about her having this really deep love of being Black and being tall and being very feminine, but also like extremely strong and like capable. And yeah, like when she first, I remember hearing her music. One of my friends, we were in LA, and I was like, "Who is this?" I'm like, "Oh, I like this. Like, this is fun. I like kind of the way she, like, what her flow is and things like that." And then like seeing her, I'm like, "Oh, I like you." I was like, something about you, it just feels very different, especially compared to, you know, compared to some of the other, you know, rappers that we had seen, where there's just like a level of, like just like this level of control of her kind of physicality and her flow that to me I find really appealing. So that's someone who I think, you know, could very much kind of, you know, reach that level if she, you know, hasn't done so already. And, you know, she does have, again, that.
Oh, is that okay? What just happened?
Firecracker? That like was an M80, but it sounded.
It was really loud.
And it was like a huge flash. There's like 10 car alarms going off right now.
Oh my God. Well, I'm glad you're okay.
That must have been right by me. Normally they're not that close. Megan Thee Stallion. I don't even know what I was
Everyone agrees. Everyone agrees. Clearly, that was just a vote in her favor. I agree too. And she made Hot Girl Summer happen last year, and like she doesn't do anything small, right? It's just like Hot Girl Summer one year, and then her, you know, collaboration with Beyonce the next year. I feel like she's on track completely, and probably I feel like there's certain people, it's like we'd be hearing, some people were just getting momentum,
Right.
and then it's like hard in the pandemic, some stuff breaks through. Is that okay? Do we just?
It's clearly, I'm gonna, one sec.
I don't know if we should. Oh,
There she is. She's back. We'll wrap it up soon. Does it seem like it's okay?
I don't even know where they're setting them off. That's the thing. Like, I'm just.
Yes, I agree. She is great and is destined for great things. I feel mentioned earlier, who has like a killer album out right now and is doing, like, she's done a great job with it given the circumstances. But yeah, it's been weird, but it's also, I do want to mention before we wrap up, just that like it's been a time for pop star goddesses. Like the pandemic, the lockdown, really certain things happened, like fans have been working to get some of these women's stuff to chart, and it did. We've had a couple Mariah Carey albums charting. We got the Glitter soundtrack streaming finally by popular demand. They sent Britney Spears' excellent album and underrated album from 2016, Glory, up the charts finally, to the point where she put out a new, better cover of the album, like the one that should have been, and a new song for the album because of it, Mood Ring, which was super exciting for fans. And that went up the charts and like knocked Lady Gaga off. So like there's been a lot of exciting stuff in addition to Lady Gaga's Chromatica coming out.
Yes.
So they've been out there. They were kind of like, not even on purpose, it's more their fans, but there's been a lot of action for pop star goddesses during the lockdown. And many of them have also, thank goodness, stepped up and helped with all kinds of causes during this time. I don't think I've seen any of them really misbehaving, so I'm very grateful for that, because can't say that for all the celebrities during this time, but they've been mostly unproblematic, and that's good, and have had some nice moments. So we can end.
I'm so I like, I'm just I really like fireworks when it's at night and they're not the crazy loud ones, and it's just someone finally decided, I'm just going to shoot off all the M80s tonight, which is the worst. Oh, sorry.
Don't need any more excitement, you guys. Not 2020 does not need any more excitement. Well, thank you so much for doing this with me. This was really great. This was really fun.
Thank you. I loved it.
Thank you, City Lit.
Thank you. Thanks for coming back I think this is your third time we've hosted you.
Yes.
Everyone get this great book at citylitbooks.com. Thanks, Britt. Thanks, Jennifer. And we'll see you when the new book comes out.
Thank you so much. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.